So in Oizvav, which is in the bottom of page 64, bottom left. So he explains that even at the high bias and their Yom Tov state of being, so then the center of the experience is himself. He comes to reap the benefits and enjoy the Gila Lakus that Hashem is sharing. So he's a taker. He's enjoying. He's there and he's enjoying, and it's Kishmak and so on, as it should be. But then when he leaves, and he goes back home, and each person has to go on his way, then he becomes a shliach. Because over there, the avodah is not him anymore. The avodah is, what does Hashem want? It's not his avodah anymore, what I want and what I'm enjoying, and what does Hashem want? In fact, in some way, maybe he doesn't enjoy it necessarily. If you saw from the Sichos Tashanun, it's never his going, it's never his thinking in shlichus in general. That the shliach, dafka good morning, has to have kaf shaloi, to have his unique mark on the shlichus, his unique thinking and his way of feeling and so on. Because he's independent, he's a shliach, he's not by the har bias, he's in his own place. And dafka there, that's what becomes a shliach, because it's all about Eivishter. It's kamoisi mamish. Doesn't think about, nothing that he's using all of his own koiches, but it's not about him. It's all about the Eivishter and the shlichus. And that is the aliyah. That's the virtue of the person, of the leaving from the har bias. Not just that, as he said at the beginning, it's not enough that he's going to a Yerida because eventually he'll get to a higher level because he made the time. No. But in his leaving, he becomes a shliach. And the fact that he became a shliach, that's already that's the virtue, even before he does the shlichus. The very fact that he's become the shliach, that's the virtue here. Now he continues in Oizvav and brings us back to Lech Lecha. Because Lech Lecha, as the Rabbi asked at the beginning, it's an opposite to it's a fakir to Tnu. Avram's going to Eretz Yisrael. And here we're talking about the virtue of leaving Eretz Yisrael, the virtue of your independence. You're doing not yourself, but for the Eivishter. And here Avram is going to Eretz Yisrael. So now he explains. First, he's going to explain how it connects to the words, the name of the parsha Lech Lecha. That's already easy because you're going. But then he'll later connect it to Avram going to Eretz Yisrael. Or not exactly, but we'll see.
That's his shlichus to go there.
That's the Likkutei of the beer. That's the uniqueness of Avram's Lech Lecha, the shlichus. Let's see. Okay, so if he's a move on, based on all the above, we'll understand Madua, why it is that avodah ruchnish zayin Cheshvon, or avodah that starts in zayin Cheshvon of becoming a shliach, of going in my own personal life, but in my personal life, it's all about Eivishter. And dafka because my personal life, as opposed to going to enjoy a lakus, when he returns from having spent time in Yom Tov with Eivishter, Nikras Lech Lecha. Now we understand why Zayin Cheshvon is in the parsha that is called Lech Lecha, just the name Lech Lecha, before we get to the content of Avram's traveling. And this is clear already, because Halicha Amiti is top of 65, true going, is dafka when a person transcends into a whole new realm of avodah. Hanalis bein haroich, which is incomparably greater, madarga kaidemes, and the previous darga kiduas is well known. We all know this is tied to the pasuk when Asati Mahalchem ben Aim de Ma'ila, that the pasuk says that Hashem puts a mover amongst these stationary ones. It's an invitation. I can't remember the prophet's giving someone an invitation that he can come and see Malachim. The way he's describing him coming to see Malachim is that you're a mover standing amongst the stationary ones. Or actually, little pasuk is that you'll be able to move around amongst the ones that are here, the ones that are standing here. I mean, the angels are standing here, and you'll be able to move around. But the way Chassidus teaches it that the person coming in is himself a mover. Now, so this explains right there. Why is the person called a mover and a malach not? Malach also moves. He goes to how many aliyahs he goes to every day. It's a whole program of aliyahs he goes to every single time. He says Kadesh, he goes to another aliyah and another aliyah. So it explains this because an angel has predictable change, predictable schedule changed. And every change is very neatly stacked on the change before. But a human, a yid, has radical change. And that's halicha. That's why it's called a mover. Even though the oimdim, the malach, and standing there are called oimdim martaka, also moving, but they're called oimdim because their movement is not dramatic, not radical. But for a yid, it's bein haroich, he can move to an incomparably higher level, and that's considered halicha. So lecha, therefore, is to transcend to a whole new level.
It's not free choice.
Sorry?
It's not free choice.
What's not free choice?
Malach just has to do what he has to do.
So how
There's no
gufa?
choice. Exactly.
How gufa? Because it's no free choice, therefore his movement is all predictable. And therefore, because beforehand, while the Yid was spending Yom Tov in the Beis Hamikdash, his avodah was to see all. Sorry, you should see and be seen. So it's about them. They want to go enjoy the revelations of Holocaust. It's kishmak, it's wonderful, it's beautiful. They want to enjoy it, as they should want to. That they, as created beings, on their own desires, should appreciate Holocaust. Yoitze, now he leaves. And he goes to where? We should say La Avodah. He goes to the Avodah of Tachas Gafne, going to his own way. When now he's going not because he's enjoying Holocaust, but because this is what Hashem wants. So that movement, that switch in the mind, switching modes from I'm enjoying this to I have my obligations. That's the switch that takes a person. That's the true Lecha, to go from one level to a completely opposite, a higher level. And what's the distinction? Bein nivra laboda. The difference between created to creator.
Isn't going to Eretz Yisrael also a commandment? The fact that he's going to Yerushalayim is not inside himself, but inside the Eivishter. So where do you splice?
Kasha.
Where do you splice the difference? Here he's going for himself, and there he's going for the Eivishter. The fact that he's going to the Beis Hamikdash.
That's a very good kasha, and
he's going to stay in Chulon.
It's a good kasha. The Rebbe does not directly address it, but L'chura, the Rebbe does a little bit address it. I think the Rebbe does. I was learning the Sichos, thinking about that, and I think even though the Rebbe doesn't enter it directly, because here the Rebbe is speaking on Zion Cheshvon, maybe because they were speaking to Zion Cheshvon people. We're not in, meaning if the Sichos was on Sukkot, maybe it would be different. I don't know, but I think embedded in the beer on Lecha is the answer, even though the Rebbe just directly answering. But here, but this tenua of wherever you want to put it, but this new of switching from it's just beautiful. The nivra, who's the nivra here? They're saying we're switching from nivra to vaida. Who's the nivra here? The nivra here is not someone who's enjoying pizza. It's not the nivra he's talking about. The nivra he's talking about is a nivra who's enjoying a lakus. But going from that mode to vaida, in which I'm not enjoying a lakus. That's not about my enjoyment, but about what Hashem wants. That's the switch from nivra to vaida. A nivra that's enjoying a lakus to serving out what the Baida wants. Okay, well, I say we'll get to that. But over here, but at this point, it's not that I'm saying.
Is be seen. It's all about you. And I don't know.
Okay, in the footnote, you see, look at 44. It's a very geschmack footnote here, and it seems like it's a for character. There was at this point at least. I was looking at the experience of Yom Tov as you as a nivra and your geschmack in Holocaust. And then Zion Cheshvon is your geschmack in Holocaust is over. Now it's what does a Baida want? We'll see maybe later that maybe.
He enjoys quite much Lechas.
Sorry?
He enjoys quite much Lechas.
Okay, that's Kav Shaloi, but it's all Baida. This is all endless. Okay, so let's look at 44. It's a very geschmack of footnotes. There cites to V'kacha, which I mentioned yesterday, and maybe if we have time, maybe on Friday, we'll finish the Sichos. Whenever we finish it, maybe we'll look at that ice. This Hemshech V'kacha Rebbe quotes quite a bit. The famous series of memoir from the Marash, upon which actually is built some Lachva in many ways. In some ways, you can say that what the Rebbe Rashab says in some Lachva in Haskalah de Kaisius that Marash says in the Kocha and Balbata Shaisius in many ways. So it's very geschmack Hemshech Kocha. And the Nekuda of the entire Kocha, as is the Nekuda of Samavov, the Mila of Mitzvahs Maisius, the Mila of performing what the Eibishter wants. And Dafka the hard work in the Avodah, not the Geschmack in the Avodah. That's the main theme of both of these Hemshechim. And so over there, the Marash discusses this sentence from the Sechta Avos. Let's look at 44. Shalachain, therefore, because there's a difference between Nivra and Boida, the Nivra and his Geschmack and Alakos, versus what does the Boida want me to do? And therefore, that's why one moment of tshuva and good deeds in this world is greater than all the life of the world to come. This is a Ferish Mishnah of Perikal Mishnah Zayin. Because in the world to come, in Gan Eden, and as you learn in B'Koch, that's even in the Olam Haba, in the future of Mashiach. What's the nature of that experience? It's the Geshmak of the Creator, the created. Shehu be'ein aroich, which is incomparable, la'tainu to the Geshmak shalaboida, of the boida. Shebatshuva ma'asim tovim alam haza, which the Eibishter has when a person does tshuva and ma'asim tovim down here. So it's taka right that Elam Haba is much more Geshmak than Elam Haza. But that's only if you're talking about your Geshmak. But if you're talking about the Eibishter's Geshmak, tshuva ma'asim tovim is where it is. So this is the mind switch. What's my Geshmak? My Geshmak is like a yomtiv. But an Ein Aroich is to go to the Geshmak of the Eibishter, which is the Shliach, the Avodah of Zayin Cheshvon. Back to the Pnim. So maybe we'll look at that. It's Oisid Beis there, Predicate Beis in the Koch. Maybe we'll look at that after we finish the Sikha. Therefore, Kshur Avodah shall keep the mitzvahs. Lastly, is brought to B'Tachtonim. Hamaschil b'Zayin Cheshvon im Lech Lecha. And this is why the fulfillment of the mitzvah that the Yid starts on Zayin Cheshvon is connected to Lech Lecha, because that's the true halicha, the true leap that the Yid takes is to switch from my Geshmak to what the Eibishter wants. And that's which happens in Zayin Cheshvon, his Geshmak and Tishrei, and the Eibishter wants the Avodah the whole year round in his shlichus of making a Dibur Tachtonim. Okay, so now let's get to Avram going to Eretz Yisrael. And I think over here maybe I have the answer to your question, Chaim. Sorry?
There's no base in Migdash then.
Where?
It's different. In our times, you're going to Eretz Yisrael then, there was nothing there. It's a shlichus.
Okay, that's not what the Rebbe says, but we'll see. Okay, let's.
Something like that.
Okay, Lefikal Amor, based on all the above, Lefikal Amor Le'il, based on all the above mentioned, Nitam Lahavan, now we can understand as Akasha, the connection shall L'Shem Parsha Lech Lecha, to the name of the Parsha Lech Lecha, which we just described means this incomparable leap from my Geshmak to what the Eibishter wants, in which we're describing not Avram leaving Eretz Yisrael, but going to Eretz Yisrael. And you're already saying the answer already. Because Avram Avinu, even before Avram Avinu, and here's another thing, to your point. Okay, well, let's just don't know. You'll see, I think over here that Rebbe addresses the points we're discussing here. Even when Avram Avinu was outside of Eretz Yisrael, that means before the Eibishter spoke to him, Lech Lecha, Pirsim Alakos, he was already spreading Alakos. The kid of Amash Levitus Hashem was already bringing people closer to serving the Eibishter, which the Pasuk doesn't describe directly, right? It's all the backstory of the Midrash. The Pasuk just starts off with, Hashem spoke to Avram, go. We don't know anything about him. He's 75 years old. And what was he doing until he's 75? We don't know. But the Midrashim, of course, tell us that he was being Mekav, how he discovered Alakos. At a young age, right? He discovered Alakos, and then he started sharing Alakos. And the Pasuk alludes to that in the words, that when he traveled, he had to take with him the people that he made in Charan, which, as we know, is a reference to the people he was Mekav Alakos. And the Kafishim was super barachava, the Midrash Chazal, but the Chachamim do elaborate on the backstory of Avraham Avinu before Hashem speaks to him. And it's brought in Halacha, Kafishim Masber Rambam, as the Rambam writes at the beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah. The Fido, it's very, in much detail, it's a whole chapter describing the Avram's backstory of how he discovered Alakos. And Rebbe elsewhere discusses why that's Negeiah to Halacha, to know a backstory of Avraham Avinu. And Rebbe explains the Kitzer that the way to fulfill the mitzvah not to serve Avodah Zarah is not just by technically not serving Avodah Zarah, but to understand why Avodah Zarah is bad. And that's why we know the backstory of Avram. Because Avram even discovered that Avodah Zarah is bad. And that's part of the Kima Mitzvah, which is why the Rambam writes in Halacha how Avram even discovered that Avodah Zarah was silly. A whole chapter. So there the Rambam writes, after describing how Avodah Zarah evolved, how Enosh began to make the mistake and how the mistake grew till finally it was full on Avodah Zarah. And then it starts describing Kivan She Yigmal Esan Zeh, when this ancient one, Avram Avinu, began to get older, the Hiskal La'idiyah, so says the Rambam, Hiskal La'idiyah La'am, he started to inform the people after the Rambam describes Avram Avinu's own discovery of Elokos. It says he started to inform other people. It's inappropriate to worship anything other than the God of the world. And to him it's worthy to bow down, and to bring kabbanas, and to pour libations, which people were doing to Avodah Zarah. Now he's telling them, what are you wasting your time doing that to stones and to the sun and the moon? Give all that to Hashem. And Avram did this so that all the creations, created beings, all the humans that are there should know. And he kept on, Rambam describes further, and he stood up and he started to share in a great voice, to all the people, to the whole world, and to inform them, there's only one Lord of the world, and to him it's appropriate to serve. And all of this that Rambam is describing is all before Hashem tells him, but all of this is because he discovered the Eibishter. He discovered the way, the truth. This is a quote from the Rambam. Behaving kavatzedek and understood the righteous path from his proper logical thinking. So Yoitze, the result of this is the sharing of Elokos of Avram Avinu, because he discovered Elokos. Because he discovered. Because he figured it out, he started to explain and give answers and tell them why they're wrong. He informed them why what they're doing is wrong. So this is to your point, Chaim. It's possible for a person to do shlichus like Avram Avinu, but it's about his discovery. It's about it's from him, not because he's a shliach. Even though he's been Mekar Eden, but it's not because he's a shliach. It's because of what it's him, his verstand, he figured it out.
So that's before he went.
Yeah, before. So we see, but the paradigm is changing a little. The switch is changing a little bit. In other words, before the change was Gilul Lakus to no Gilul Lakus. Gilul Lakus in Alila Regel, and no Gilul Lakus in Zayin Cheshvon. And that's why you went from a Sachir, because there was Gilul Lakus and you're enjoying it, to the Shliach, because you don't have a Gilul Lakus. But in the last Ois and Ois Vav, Rebbe said that's not really the switch. The switch is not from yes Gilul Lakus to no Gilul Lakus. The switch is from me-centered life to God-centered life. And now comes the Rebbe in Ois Zayin and says, you can have a me-centered life even when you're doing shlichus. Just like Avram Avinu before Hashem spoke to him. Which is already another.
Second level. The first level of it's not the ultimate level.
What do you mean?
But you weren't
He
commanded.
said there's 3 levels.
Because he wasn't commanded yet. That's right, because he wasn't commanded yet. The Ikar here because he wasn't commanded.
It's like a guy who's doing tzvah, not because he's not allowed
Maybe
to about anything. He's just going on the street.
Because he figured out it's a nice thing to do.
He figured he sees it's a beautiful thing. He's doing it.
That's exactly right. So the person can be doing shlichus, but he's not he's doing shlichus in Mekar Eden, but he's not a shliach. Because it's about what he figured out and what he likes. So they were shifting a little bit. Because by Alila Regel, no one's being Mekar of anybody.
Because it's good marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. So and therefore because they've now just unpacked another level in Ois Vav, that the switch between Alila Regel to Zayin Cheshvon is not just Gilul Lakus versus no Gilul Lakus, as he said before, but it's a difference between my Gishmak to Eibishter Kavana. So my Gishmak to Eibishter Kavana could also be within being Mekar Eden, as it was with Avram Avinu. Before Hashem spoke to him, there was no inyan of shlichus. Hashem didn't speak to him. So it's all about his Gishmak and his figuring it out. But now that Lecha comes, the Oisches, Altach, Lach became above and beyond that. So it's not to negate that he figured out a Lakos. That's a good thing. As I mentioned before, the Rambam quotes this in Halacha because a person is supposed to understand why Avodah Zarah is no good. But on top of that, now comes Hashem's command. Lecha, you go. And now Avram begins a new Seder Avodah.
So we stop. The before you go further, so maybe in answer to the question that was posed before, the fact that he's going to Yerushalayim is
that's
only
right.
because of he likes it. He said it's a beautiful thing. I'm going there.
That's
That's all about me.
And that's what I think. That's what I was going to say. That even though that doesn't answer the question directly, because the Rebbe now went from before it was a question of Gilulakos, no Gilulakos, but now it's my Gishmak to Eibishter centric. That question, my Gishmak versus Eibishter centric, could be Sai in based on Mikdash. I can be going for my Gishmak, or could be going because it's what the Eibishter wants, and Sai in Shlichus. I could be doing Shlichus because it's my Gishmak, or I could be doing Shlichus because the Eibishter wants. So first Rebbe is addressing the Lecha element. He was being Mekadosh already before, but that wasn't because of Shlichus. So he figured it out, and now Lecha comes to Shlichus.
Wasn't going as on Eretz
Oh, that's right. So even though he's going up to Eretz Yisrael, that's right. So even though he's going up to Eretz Yisrael, it's no longer because of his Gishmak. It's going because Hashem told him to go to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, that could be an answer to your question, that a person can be Oler Regel also for these two
I'm
reasons.
doing the mitzvah because it makes sense.
Because it's Gishmak and it's
That's
enjoyable.
what
That's
I'm
right.
doing the
That's it.
mitzvah because I'm going to get a reward. It's two.
So that's why I think if the Sicha was said in Sukkot, that's what they would have highlighted, I think. But since the Sicha is Zayin Cheshvon, he's highlighting the Zayin Cheshvon element. But the truth is, you're right. Even as you're going up to Eretz Yisrael, it could be because the Eibishter commanded Lech Lecha. It could be because you want to, because it's Gishmak. We'll see in Oisches now. Anyway, so he's already been Mekadosh even before. That's what we're learning in Zion. He's already been Mekadosh people, but all that was because he figured out that Kiruv is a good thing. But now comes Lech Lecha. Wait. It's all good.
It's usually my job.
Yeah. So now comes Lech Lecha, where Hashem commands to go. So Gilul Lakos, Ekev Tzivui Hashem. So now why is he spreading the Lakos? Not because he figured out the Lakos is the most Gishmaka thing in the world. He's now spreading the Lakos because Hashem told him to. So technically speaking, he was doing the exact same thing. Spreading the Lakos before, spreading the Lakos after. But before because he figured it out, and now because Hashem told him to. Again, this is a change from the previous Isis. Before the switch was also what you're doing. Before I'm taking a lakos and now I'm sharing a lakos. But now it's different. You could be sharing a lakos before and after, but it's because I figured it out because Hashem told me.
However, 49.
Okay, he's referring to Dargis. There was 4 Dargis in Abraham's relationship with lakos, and the highest one is his classiest mitzvahs. Meaning that now he's doing things that Hashem commanded. That's I think the Likkutei of the thing. But I'm not familiar with the Tzadkus Paneach there. And therefore, Dafka be Gil Eretz Yisrael. Dafka when he goes to Eretz Yisrael, meaning it's irrelevant whether he's going to Eretz Yisrael or leaving Eretz Yisrael. The point is now he's going b'shlichus shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the key here. He's doing it because Hashem told him to. He's technically going to Eretz Yisrael, and we are technically leaving Eretz Yisrael because we're going Zayin Cheshvon. What's the chiluk? The point is we're doing what Hashem wants. That's the point. So now Dafka they get to Yisrael. Now we learn by Yikra Shem Hashem. Now he calls out to Hashem. Right? The pasuk says it 3 times. Once before when he first gets there, and then another time when he comes back after going to Mitzrayim, and another time after he wins the wars with Kedar Omer. So Dafka there by Yikra Shem Hashem. Even though before him he was also being Mekadosh in the world, he was already spreading the lakos. He was mentioned before. So now Torah is informing us. It's not just that now he has a new location where he's sharing the lakos. Before he was outside, he was sharing the lakos in Haran, and now he's also sharing the lakos in Eretz Yisrael because that's where he went. That's not what the Torah is telling us. The Torah is telling us that the way he's being Megaleh lakos now is a new level. Now that Hashem told him to go and spread a lakos, everything he's doing, whether it's in Eretz Yisrael, out of Eretz Yisrael, it so happens that it's in Eretz Yisrael. But the fact that it's a new location is not the issue here. The issue here is now that it's on the tzivui of Hashem. So now his avodah becomes on a whole new level. As Rashi explains, this is when Avraham is telling Eliezer to go find a wife for his daughter, and there he gives him a brief history of where he is. Hashem told me to leave, and Hashem gave me a bracha, and so on. He gives like a whole little history, and he describes Hashem before. There's a small distinction in the pasuk which Rashi points out. When he describes Hashem before Hashem told him Lech Lecha, it says that Hashem is Elokei Hashemayim. But when it describes Hashem after he said Lech Lecha, Lecha Shemayim ve'Lecha Haaretz. So explains Rashi. Sorry?
The world knows it.
Oh, so Rashi explains, Achshav Lecha Shemayim ve'Lecha Haaretz. Now that Hashem told me Lech Lecha, this is how Rashi explains that statement of Abraham. Hashem is both Lecha Shemayim and Lecha Haaretz. Sheher Galta b'Priya Briyos. I made it, I made it a commonplace amongst creation. When I first left my father's house, he was a Lecha Shemayim, not Lecha Haaretz. Because people didn't really know him, and his name wasn't accustomed in the land. What's the pshat? Why didn't people know about him? Didn't we just finish reading that Avram was already being Mekadev Holocaust before? So why is Rashi saying that after Lech Lecha, now people know who he is? Before him, we also knew who he was, because Avram was telling everybody about it. But there's a different oifim when Avram is telling them about it because he figured it out, versus Avram telling them after Lech Lecha. However, it's true that even before Hashem told him Lech Lecha, he was already being Megala Holocaust. He was already spreading Holocaust. Nobody truly recognized him. His name wasn't accustomed in the land. People knew him because I explained to them, but not because they truly knew him. Because they never gave the shlichus, which is what we mentioned in the Sichos Tafshinun, where they talks about two levels in the shlichus. Number one is the fact that you were made a shliach, and then there's the fulfillment of the shliach, of the shlichus. And the making you of a shliach is the key component here. Till then, it's not shlichus shalom k'maisai until the shlichus is given, and that's what's switched in Lech Lecha. The shlichus was given. The dafke b'mitzvos b'Hashem Hashem Yisrael B'Eretz Yisrael. Dafke when here's not that he came to Eretz Yisrael, but rather it's because after Hashem told him Lech Lecha, now he's doing it b'shluchos tishal makeh. Dafke azer galta b'piyah briyos. And mil macheres, in other words, and here the Rabbi sums it up. Here's some Holocaust b'yais Avram b'chutz la'aretz. When Avram Avinu was spreading Holocaust while he was outside of Eretz Yisrael, nova makaros sichos. It came because he figured it out. Yeah. And therefore, the net result is because the relationship with Holocaust here is because I figured it out, so then I have to remain a Metzius. Olam remains a Metzius. So Olam is Metzius b'fnei atzmai. The world is an independent being, which understands that Holocaust is in charge. Because I figured it out. So I can't get rid of the I if it comes from I figuring it out. The Ilah appears in Shlach. But once Avram has commanded Lech Lecha, and now he's being Megala Holocaust, Nova Mitziva Aboida, so now his spreading Holocaust comes as the result of Hashem's command. And now we could say, Kel Olam, God world, not God of the world, but God world. Because Veloy Kel Ha'olam, not God of the world, as we know from Chassidus and the Bas Lagani Mamorim, Sha'olam Holocaustim Kivyoch Mitzias Achas. That the world and Holocaust are, as it were, one Mitzias. So the one Mitzias Eibishter. Right? Now, here, from this paragraph, Rebbe goes into the next level in Ois Tes, which it's hard to know if it's a new darga or it's a new nuance, but here the Rebbe is now talking about such a bittul where the whole Mitzias is all Holocaust, which on the surface one could think that means it's a negation of Kav Shaloi, but I don't think it's the correct understanding. I think it means that all the Kav Shaloi is all Holocaust. That's what I think it means. That's what I think it means, because it still goes back to the original point that Dafka, when he leaves Holocaust, he becomes a shliach. That's when Dafka, when he's distant, he's a shliach. And Dafka, we learned in Tafshinun, Dafka, the Kav Shaloi is his own opinion. That's what makes him a shliach. Otherwise, he's just a sachir. But let's see, because Rebbe does here get to a very deep, high level. Ois Tes. Okay, so what did we just? Sorry. That's what we're saying.
So it's not.
No, I think you're correct. Over here, we're focusing on Zayin Cheshvon Avodah, but you're right. And I think that's what we learned from Lech, from Abraham. That even though he's going to Eretz Yisrael, but the switch here is not outside of Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. The switch here is doing what I figured out, what the Eibishter says. So whether I'm going to Eretz Yisrael or leaving Eretz Yisrael, it's all Eibishter said.
But the other
Sorry?
The regular person going up and going back is both where you're commanded.
Okay, so if we're talking perfect people who are in equilibrium our whole life, and talk everything we do is for Holocaust. But L'Poel Mamish, we all have a very nice Geshmak time in the Sukkos. That's the reality, right? And this is the switch that was telling us to. Yeah, there are sometimes Rebbe writes that, like we saw in Tashanun, Rebbe writes in the footnote, the fact that you're an independent being is because the Mashalech has a geschmack in you being an independent being. Yeah, there's other places that says a similar thing. The fact that you have a geschmack in Gilul Lakos is because they wants you to have a geschmack in Gilul Lakos. It's all good, but everything in its proper place. Okay, so what we just finished saying that now there's a new nuance that when we switch from I figured out to Eibishter commanded, so now there's also the message is a deeper message. Because when it's I figured out, then the I remains, because I figured out. But when it's Eibishter commanded, and even my I is batal talakos. It's Kel Olam. The world itself is batal talakos. Not that the world figured out talakos and the Eibishter is in charge. The world is mitzvah, but the Eibishter is in charge. That would be because we figured it out. And therefore we nominate Eibishter as king, so to speak. But we remain mitzvahs. If it's because the Eibishter commanded, so then all that I am is only lakos. It's al derech what Rabbi Gerari from Detroit likes to say, the difference between Ani Nevresi the Shamash Kaini, I was created to serve my master, versus Ani Loi Nevresi El Shamash Kaini. I wasn't created but for serving my master. What's the difference? In the first oifin, the premise is I exist. And my existence is to serve Eibishter. And the second one, the premise is I don't exist. I exist, it's because I have to serve my master. Ani Loi Nevresi, I wasn't created. Ella but for Mishamash Kaini to serve my master. Okay, so from there goes never to say, let's at least begin. This is also the explanation for the fact that the pasuk lists and specifies Lecha, go me'artzacha from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's house, Hadegesh, the emphasis here, mishum Ain't a Muslim Khan is not placed here. The emphasis is not here. Go to Eretz Yisrael because that's where Gilul Lakus is. It's not what Hashem says. He says, I'll show you the Gilul Lakus. You'll get it. You might get at the end. It's not the Zegesh here. And like the primary thing is it's Yasim, it's Yusai. Believe what you think is right. Artzecha, La'aticha, Obeis Avicha. And I think the part here is not that you change what you're doing. Because Avram Avinu is doing the same thing before and after. But it's no longer because you're doing it. So go out of your mitzias. Continue doing exactly what you're doing of being Mefaris Malakos, but not in your mitzias. Chassidus says it quite clearly. I think, okay, let's stop over here. And tomorrow we'll get weiter in this avodah. So it's a little bit of a new level, but I don't think it's negating the previous ones. I think it's stacking above it, as we're seeing. But there's a little bit of like a progression. Starts off with the difference between Gilul Lakus to no Gilul Lakus, and then he went to, even if there's the same avodah before and after, but it's a whole new level when I'm doing it because Hashem asked versus when I'm doing it because I figured it out. And then there's going to be another level tomorrow where even what I think is no longer what I think anymore. It's what Hashem thinks in me.
From Chumash, right? Clearly that when you commanded it to a higher level.
Yeah.
Straight from there.
Okay, wonderful day.
When you commanded it to a different level.